Welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friedman, and today we're talking about how to become an inspiring leader. And how does that work? Well, uh, it's simple, but not necessarily easy because in a lot of cases, it's going to take some courage, right? Because example is the most powerful form of leadership. So we need to share our examples, right? And particularly, we need to share how we've overcome obstacles or how we're addressing obstacles that we haven't yet overcome and our process in doing that. And that inspires the heck out of people, right? Because I know, like me and you, right? We've seen people that we related to, right? And we said, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it, right? And that's what we want to inspire in other people is that idea that, you know what, if we can do it, they can do it. And so it's about relating. So it's talking about the struggles that we had to overcome and the challenges that we had to face, in order to get where we are. I mean, I'll tell you that, I've been, I give you a couple examples of things, and in some cases they're business oriented things, and in other cases they're personal things. When I got divorced, I wanted to remarry, but I wanted to do it right this time. It took me 5 years of trial and error before I met somebody who I really loved who wanted to marry me. And that was, and she challenges me and I respect her, I admire her. I mean it's what I wanted, right? And in some cases it's been a lot more difficult than what I thought, but I stuck with it, right? And I got to the point where I said, God, either I want to meet somebody who I really love who wants to marry me or I want to die, but I'm not going on like this anymore. I mean, my commitment's total. I mean, either we figure this out or I'm done. And I did. And then another example was for over 20 years, or close to 20 years, I wanted to start my own business, and I could never figure out how or why or what to do to start my own business, and it was because all of those thoughts about I don't have anything to offer and I'll just fail and I can't make this work, and all of those thoughts were being denied, and those denied thoughts were stopping me in my tracks, and until I uh, recognized those thoughts, I didn't really have the strength to say, yeah, you know what, maybe I won't make this work, but I've got to try. I owe it to myself to try. And 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 I did, and I started a business in 1991 and it's still going today. So more than 25 years later, almost, I don't know, longer. Anyway, um, and so it's being an example and it's being vulnerable and it's being open. And basically, what it is it's sharing in a way that other people can relate to the challenges that we faced and how we overcame them. And that's how you become an inspiring leader. Is that you share your stories. You share your stories in a way that other people can relate to, that other people can see themselves in, and other people can say, "Yeah, I could do that." And I know in some of my coaching, I was coaching someone in starting their own business, right? Because he looked at me and he said, I saw what you did. I want to do that too. And so I started walking him through it. And the most critical juncture in the whole thing was he said, I'm afraid maybe I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm so nervous. And I was like right on top of that. I said, you know what? You'd be doing the wrong thing if you weren't nervous. Being nervous is the right thing. It's pointing out to you what you need to address in order to succeed. So you're nervous about this. So, all right, so address that so you can succeed. You're nervous about that. Address that so you succeed. I said you would have a greater chance of failure if you were not nervous because you'd be denying it. And we're all nervous when we start a new business. And he went on to start a successful business and achieve what he wanted and just went on from there. So, but the point is that I told him, I said, when I started my own business, I was physically shaking in fear, but I proceeded anyway and I made it work. And just the honesty and the authenticity of sharing my story inspired him to be able to start his own shop, which he did successfully. And so it's about uh, our story. Tell our story a relatable way. I heard, Body by Jake speak one time, and the one point he kept making all the way is he said, "Don't give up." He said there were all kinds of times when I thought I would just never make it and stuff, and I can't tell you how many times I've had the thought about giving up, and I thought, you know what? Every single time I ended up telling myself I owe it to myself to give myself a chance, to give myself a chance at leading the life that's important to me that I want to lead. And you know what? And I still remember telling my father this, 40 years ago, close to 50 years ago, no, 40 years ago. I said, I could accept failing a lot better than I could accept not trying. And I owe it to myself, and it's important to me, and it's something that I can give myself is the chance to succeed at the level that I want to succeed at. And there's still things I'm working on, right? I mean, I want to advance win-win thinking so it's the dominant thinking in the world and take a look around. There's a long way to go to get there. But I haven't given up. And there, believe me, there's all kinds of days when I want to give up. I mean, it just doesn't seem possible to do. And then, something will happen, and I'll be inspired and I'll go like, yeah, you know what? I can take another step forward and I can do this. And then, I'll go back and, this isn't, yeah, that was great and it was a step forward, but there's still like a bazillion more steps forward that need to be taken, and then, in discouragement and the thoughts of like, give up, this is a fool's errand, you're not going to be able to do this, all come back, with just immense power. And I just need to, keep, just in order to keep going, I need to say my mantra and I need to focus on my breath. Otherwise, the negativity of it just crushes me. And I've done all kinds of work in accepting the negative thoughts and talking about them and choosing not to act on them. And boy, I'm telling you, I'm here to say that it can take repetition after repetition after repetition to get to the point to where those thoughts are so weak that they don't have a lot of power in our life. And when I say repetition, what I mean is accepting the thought that says, what's true is the thought that I'm never going to make this happen and I'm never going to make a viable business and a successful contribution to the world at the level that I aspire to. I'm never going to make that happen. That thought versus I've succeeded at everything I've tried to do. And it's taken me a long time and it's taken me a lot of failures and it's taken me a lot of struggles and learning and everything else. But you know what? I've persevered, and so I have to decide which thought am I going to act on? Am I going to act on the thought that says, it took me, 20 years before I would allow myself to write a book and put it out there, but I persisted, and I can persist in this too, even though it's been 40 years in the making of this, and I still haven't figured it out yet. Am I going to act on the thought that says I'm going to figure it out or die trying? Or am I going to act on the thought that says, just give up, you're wasting your time, you're causing yourself grief? There's a choice. And I'm here recording this podcast telling you that the choice I'm making today is to at least keep trying. And every time that I try, I get a little bit stronger and I go, you know what? I'm getting a little bit stronger. I'm not strong enough yet. I'll get a little bit stronger, and eventually I'm going to be strong enough, and I'm going to tip the scales. I'm going to do it, and I feel that strength and that certainty, come through. But it only comes by first acknowledging that thought that says, this is stupid. You're never going to get there. It's a fool's errand, and say that's a thought, and I have a choice. Am I going to believe and act on that thought that's limiting, or am I going to compare it to a thought that's empowering? That I choose to act on. What am I going to do? And here I am, for the umpteenth millionth time, sharing about this, healing it through acceptance, making the choice that I'm going to persist. And that's leadership. If you could feel the authenticity of my struggle and the commitment that I have, my story has the ability to inspire people. And that's how executive leadership works. I do thought coaching because just like until I could acknowledge the thoughts that kept me from publishing a book, before I was free to choose not to act on that thought was stopping me, right? And now I've published 13 books, right? But only after I acknowledged that thought that was, you don't have anything to offer, no one's going to buy it, it's a waste, don't do it, you just embarrass yourself. It's wrong, it's all wrong, nobody cares what you have to say anyway. I had to acknowledge that thought before I could move forward. And that's what I do in my thought coaching is I help you acknowledge your thoughts and claim your power to choose which of those thoughts you're going to act on. Choose which of those thoughts you're going to believe is true. And it's an awesome experience. And I invite you for a free introductory coaching session on your thoughts at you can schedule your time by emailing me at scottfriedman40@gmail.com, SCOTTFRIEDMAN40@gmail.com. My books are available on Amazon. You can find links to them on my website, www.thoughtcoachingbyscott.com. So anyway, the bottom line in all of this is that we create our world with our thoughts. And when we know what our thoughts are, we have the power to choose which ones to act on. And when we can choose which thoughts we act on, then we can make our lives what we want it to be. And that's the story. It's hard. It's difficult. There's going to be struggles and failures and everything else. But it beats the heck out of not giving ourselves a chance. I owe it to myself to give myself a chance, and you owe it to yourself to give yourself a chance to make your life everything you ever wanted it to be. And if you want my help, I'm here. You don't need my help. You can do it on your own. But if you want my help, I'm here for you. Okay.